Thanks very much for allowing us to come forward and share the concerns of agriculture as it relates to the H1N1 virus. Madam Chairwoman, we had many pork producers who would have relished the opportunity to come in today to talk and testify about their personal experience, how H1N1 has impacted the bottom line for pork producers. The influenza has indeed impacted many family farmers. Many have been forced to make serious changes to their operations. When it hit, they had already been struggling through about 18 months of losses due to increased expenses, many of those expenses beyond their control, and they were looking forward to a summer that might bring indeed them out of the negatives. The futures market indicates that we're going to have very little chance of profit in the pork industry for at least the next 9 months. And we anticipate the credit markets will continue to be a problem for pork producers, and that many of them will be forced to sell off a sizable portion of their inventory to reduce herd size. This isn't going to affect just pork producers, but obviously the employees who work for them, and those folks will not only be without income, but also likely without any type of health insurance. The impact on our rural communities is also going to be tremendous. The impact of decisions forced on pork producers, partly by H1N1, does not stop at the farm gate, but also greatly impacts businesses in town. If herd sizes are further downsized, farmers will purchase fewer supplies from local businesses such as the fuel station, propane supplier, and veterinarians. Rural communities are already struggling to maintain businesses, and the credit issues currently facing both the pork and dairy sectors are very likely to further erode the viability of many rural communities. I want to emphasize the importance of agriculture to the recovery of our economy. While fewer than 1% of Americans are engaged directly in agriculture, the sector has a huge impact on our economy. According to USDA, ag and food account for about 13% of U.S. gross domestic product. Agriculture withstood the downturn in the economy longer than most sectors, but the downturn has now caught up with the ag sector in general and our livestock producers specifically. The recent sales price received for hogs is down $25 per head in only the last 4 months. If the December Chicago Mercantile Exchange lean hog futures price is an accurate forecast of where hogs will be priced at year-end, producers will be losing $50 per head. Even the futures price for April of 2010 indicates a $25 per head loss. We believe Congress and the administration could do several things that would be helpful to the pork sector specifically and would also impact the livestock industry in general. The H1N1 influenza strain cannot be transmitted by eating pork. It is a food safety issue, not a foodborne illness. We've talked a lot today about the fact that the virus doesn't spread to meat. Pork is safe to eat. We applaud the administration for what they've tried to do to get that message out. But we need Congress and the administration alike to keep reminding consumers of this fact and use every means possible to ensure that some in the media quit referring to it by other names than H1N1. We also applaud USDA and the United States Trade Representative. We think they've worked diligently with our trading partners to ensure that they know that U.S. pork and pork products are safe and there's no basis for restricting imports. Yet in China, the world's largest pork export market, 64% of its consumers stopped eating pork in the early stages of the H1N1 influenza outbreak. More than 1 in 5 consumers in China still believe that eating pork can result in catching the flu virus. This is according to a survey commissioned by the U.S. Meat Export Federation. 54% of those also said in the survey they fear the connection between pork and the flu virus and say it's because the virus has been labeled swine flu. In the U.S., we have had market access issues in 2 of our top 6 pork export markets, China and Russia. We believe this is a large part of why during the first 6 months of 2009, U.S. pork exports have dropped 18% from the levels in the same 6-month period during 2008. Also, just before the August recess, the House and Senate passed legislation that provides $1.85 billion in funding for the Public Health and Social Services Emergency Fund to prepare for and respond to an influenza pandemic. The conference report on that legislation states that funds appropriated and not specifically designated may be transferred to and merged with other appropriation accounts of the Department of Health and Human Services and other federal agencies as determined by HHS. The Senate version of the language actually specifically called for the transfer of $100 million to USDA under the heading Ag Programs, Production, Processing, and Marketing. We have asked the administration to transfer at least $100 million of the $1.85 billion for use in additional government purchases of pork. Without question, part of today's decrease in pork prices is due to the media's misuse of the term swine flu rather than the H1N1 virus. Pork producers are facing dire circumstances and need the government to step up to purchase more pork products. Any assistance that this committee could provide in encouraging the administration to make such a transfer of funds would be greatly appreciated. We're very concerned about the many farm families around the U.S., and we want to make sure that they continue to raise pork and they're able to sell it here and around the world. We must all continue to work with our trading partners to assure them we are open for business and U.S. pork is safe. There are many hardworking families whose livelihoods depend on us conveying this message of safety. We must also use whatever means possible to encourage additional purchases of pork in the near future.
Thank you, Ms. Thatcher.